Hi everyone, this is Eden of Light Cycle Astrology. Welcome back to the channel, friends. Today we are taking a look at the astrology for the next week ahead between January the 13th and the 19th of 2025. And boy, is this an exciting week for astrology. I would argue maybe one of the most powerful weeks of the whole year of 2025. There is so many astrological transits that are coming through in this week. I wish that we could take a look at each one in detail, but that would just be too overwhelming for myself and for you to do. So today what we're going to do is we'll take a look at the aspects just briefly, and then we'll focus in on what I think is the most important astrology of the week, which is going to be around the time of the full moon. The moon becomes full, and then very shortly after, there is a sun opposition to Mars. So this full moon is culminating in her own sign in Cancer. And of course, we have Mars retrograde in Cancer, and the full moon happens only a few degrees before where Mars is in Cancer. So in other words, we also have what I'm calling a full Mars in the sign of Cancer, meaning that both the moon and Mars are in this place of maximal light that is being, of course, reflected from the sun shining in exact opposition to both of those bodies. So this, for me, is signifying a very powerful moment in the Mars retrograde story. Mars is retrograde for 78 days approximately. And when you think about all the time that we have spent, or all the time that we will spend until Mars finally leaves Cancer for the second time, you know that it's been about 5.5 months that we have been working with or dealing with or working through Mars in Cancer themes, each one of us personally in our own lives. So the midpoint of the Mars retrograde, which is indicated by the sun's opposition to Mars, that always happens in a Mars retrograde, that we would normally still be a very powerful moment in the overall story. I feel like this particular Mars retrograde is so potent and so powerful and so important to look at because it just happens to be synchronized with the full moon, the moon ripening to culmination in her own temple. So it's almost kind of like more like an eclipse, you might say, where it's just a very, very powerful full moon. And we are sort of tying in themes that have been going on for months and months with the Mars retrograde, or the Mars even before retrograde, Mars in Cancer things. And we still have a few months to go before Mars is done with the retrograde and done being in Cancer. So this whole thing is sort of coming to a very poignant inflection point that is signified by this full moon in Cancer this week. So the effects of which, of course, are going to be noticed happening before the full moon and for sure after the full moon. But this is an important week to sort of take an extra careful look at some of these narratives or themes that may be coinciding or accompanying with such Mars in Cancer overall or overarching narratives. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to offer 5 things or themes that may be noticed, and you'll have to sort of tailor them to your own Mars in Cancer story that has been sort of going along with you personally, or the Mars in retrograde in Cancer story that you may have noticed. So I'm going to offer some of the interpretations, some of the soulful kinds of things that archetypally may be hinting at what the narrative is meant for you to look at, so to speak. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. And you can find me at lightcycleastrology.com, or you can find me at my email by direct email at edanmabon@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of me just directly that way. All right, well, let's go ahead now, and we're going to take a look at the transits for the week before we jump into the deep dive into the full Mars and the full moon here in Cancer. So on Monday, let me just grab my title. We have a couple of things that are kicking off the week here. We have the actual Cancer full moon on Monday. You see there's the sun at almost 24, Capricorn making an opposition to the moon's passage through that 24th degree in Cancer. But simultaneously, you see here is also the sun setting up a perfected trine to Uranus. So that's interesting if we're looking for like sun trine Uranus symbolism that may be speaking right now. It could be something like, is there a way to sort of break out of the rut or break out of the mold in a kind of easy way, or is there support to do that? Maybe so. So that's one thing that is baked in, of course, to this full moon as well. Then on Tuesday, we also are going to get a very blessed Venus square Jupiter aspect. You see Venus exalted, lifted up high in very good dignity in Pisces, making a square to Jupiter. You have both benefic planets sending a rays back and forth to one another. That's a really good thing. One thing to keep in mind when we get into the Mars stuff is that the benefics coming together is going to add a lot of padding, support, soothing, or sort of better fortune that may mitigate a lot of the rougher stuff that could come with the Mars stuff. So that's like the saving grace of maybe some of the more challenging things that are happening. If we go to what's next here, if we go to Wednesday, this is going to be when the sun will perfect its opposition to Mars. So this is what I'm calling the full Mars. I'm quite proud of myself, by the way, I don't know if anybody has ever called this a full Mars, but essentially that's what it is. This is a powerful Mars. I think Austin Coptic is talking about this a little bit on the Astrology podcast, where you get this Mars that is very, very bright, right? It's fully illuminated and reflecting the light of the sun at this time, and it's rising in opposition to the sun. So as the sun sets, there's Mars rising up. He was talking about this, so I have to give him some credit for this a little bit. But the full Mars, right? It's like a full moon, but it's a full Mars. It's very visible. It's very bright. And this is going to add some characteristics to the interpretation of the way that we're looking at the meaning of this particular Mars right now, right? It is acting in a way like a full moon. There are many other caveats to this. For instance, the dignity that Mars is placed in this sign of Mars's depression in Cancer, of course, adds into this. So this gives us a kind of nuanced way to interpret. We have a kind of fallen or depressed Mars that is very visible and bright. Wow, what a combination. So that's happening on Wednesday. Then we jump ahead to Saturday or Sunday, depending on, I don't know, what you want to, where you want to see this sort of landing. And we're going to get a Venus making a conjunction to Saturn. Now, normally, just in passing, because we're not really talking that much about these other transits this week, I'll say this about Venus conjunct Saturn. Usually, people that follow astrology and know stuff about astrology, they're going to sort of wince at Venus conjunct Saturn. You're going to sort of go, oh, that's not a good one, right? It's like, that one could be tough or something. It feels like, is the person I love gonna reject me or something like that, right? Normally that might be a pretty valid way to go about interpreting this. But what I would say is that with Venus in the sign of Pisces, where she has incredible dignity, she is this is sort of being categorized in the category of a benefic that is meeting another planet, a benefic in high dignity. So you would say that Venus definitely has more power. She's in more a kind of a better position, or has the better reputation, the better dignity, the better status, right? She has sort of the benefic high ground, if you will, in this place. So she is going to give a much more constructive or positive outcome to Saturn-y things, right? She is going to, this is much more of an interpretation where you could say this could be a marriage proposal where two people are saying, yes, I'm going to commit, right? Or something like that. So versus it's something more along the lines of where Venus is sort of harmed by Saturn. This is much more that Saturn is sort of enhanced by Venus, if you will. So that's what I would say about that. Okay, now let's get out of the real-time clock, and we're going to get into the full Mars. 5 themes you may notice around this, and I'm going to pull up my notes. Okay, so this week, precisely as the moon becomes full in Cancer, she moves to conjunct Mars. This means that the sun stands in opposition to both the moon and Mars at the same time, making a culmination of light within the moon's monthly cycle and a culmination of light within Mars's retrograde period. Very important. The sun will cast maximal light on both. You might say we're getting a full moon and a full Mars, quote unquote, simultaneously. The time of Mars's maximal light represents a culmination of fruition or like an inflection point, the same meaning we give to the full moon, right? But for Mars retrograde, this moment highlights an important plot point in the Mars retrograde story for each one of us as we individually experience this transit. Mars spends an accumulative 5.5 months in Cancer. That's calculating the time Mars was in Cancer in 2024 and the time that it's in Cancer right now until it moves out, of course, and is retrograde for 78 days between December 7th, 2024 and April 16th, 2025. So to me, the fact that the Cancer full moon hits exactly as the halfway point of the retrograde is reached puts an extra powerful and poignant meaning, in particular, within the overall 5-month period. Why? Mars, after all, in Cancer, having low dignity in the sign of its depression, is being dragged backwards by the forces of cosmic fate. Remember that when a planet is retrograde, it's being carried back by it's not heading against the direction of the spin of the world, right? It's sort of being pulled along with the primary motion of the sky. And that can represent that a planet loses its own self-determination or willpower. It's sort of maybe being pulled back into some cosmic fate that it doesn't really have control over, right? So when being dragged backwards by the forces of cosmic fate, Mars strives now more than ever to climb back up from the place of its low dignity, and does so in a very visible and empowered manner, bringing with it the fruits or the baggage of the past several months. I say that because this is the culminative moment right here, right? Just like we would say a full moon is sort of the culmination of the lunation cycle. This is a culmination where the light is full and the cycle is sort of birthing something, right? It's harvesting or reaping something. The fruit is now ripe, but that could also mean that there's like baggage that is also very heavy and sort of loaded on the tree as well. This maximal luminosity strikes me as a potential strong rise of the underdog narrative, but will the dog lash out, inflicting injury, or will it shine like a heroic champion? Cue the Rocky theme song here. Now, the moon full in her own sign is able to express very naturally sensitivity, nurturing, mothering, emotionality, and tends to gather people around her and nest them and will be very reflective. So the full moon in the moon sign is going to add this powerful nuance to what Mars is going through right now. So Mars may find himself in this environment, in a sort of sensitive, nurturing, mothering, emotional, Mars may be trying to work with the nest that the moon is gathering around him. Mars may be very dealing with reflective stuff or sensitivity or things like that. Okay, now putting this together, and you could get some possibilities. Number one, the broader world. This is sort of how do we maybe see this just outside of our own personal stories? In the broader world, we may notice questions arising and becoming illuminated around the topics of the defense of nations, homeland, property, communities, and family. Think of the California wildfires, for example, as a place that needs this sort of defense right now, of course. So that's a big one that you could see. Number two, on a personal level, when emotional resentment, past wounds, or something we are butthurt over can no longer be ignored and becomes obvious whether we want it to or not, strains against the more stubborn side of our nature that might prefer to remain in control, be the boss, keep silent, reject, or disassociate from our feelings, and then is able to meet within a nurturing environment that the moon provides in Cancer. How does Mars react? Does he lash out, causing injury under the impulsive rashness or boiling emotions, beneath the surface? Or will Mars find himself in the company that gives him the recognition he feels he deserves for all of his past dedication, maybe for the protection or the sacrifices that he's made on behalf of the group? So that's number two. That's a really, really important one. I think that is one that could surface for a lot of people because, Mars is, you think about the sun in Capricorn, and if you know any Capricorn people, you know that they're not always the people that are going to just be an open book with their emotions, right? And they're usually very focused on goals or work or something like that. Now I know that's a stereotype, but they can of course fall into that stereotype very easily. And you think about how sensitive Mars in Cancer may be. So it's like this tension between this sort of let's just ignore it and just be stoic and keep it to ourselves and just nose to the grindstone and just ride roughshod over the feelings because we got to get some stuff done or whatever. That is kind of in that tension with Mars that is saying, yeah, but I'm harboring some wounds, I'm butthurt about something. There's some baggage. There's something happening that is really, really challenging to come to terms with. And there's this pull between just sort of stoically carrying on, soldiering on, and knowing how maybe we need to address some of those more emotional things. That can be really challenging, right? And it sort of meets against this kind of stubbornness that, each person has a particular way that they can be stubborn about things. And of course, most of us prefer to sort of, maintain composure or be in control or, be assertive or the boss in our own right. And so there's a tendency here for maybe us to want to keep silent, reject or disassociate the feelings on the sun in Capricorn side. But then if Mars is going through the turmoil emotionally and is met with a kind of really powerful lunar family that maybe is there to provide some kind of nurturance or like a nurturing environment, that's really interesting. How does Mars come out with maybe some of the feelings that Mars has been contending with? And one thing that you could definitely see is that Mars can be very impulsive and rash and not understand emotions in a soft way when Mars is in Cancer, right? Mars can sort of lash out and hurt people that he loves, just based out of a kind of boiling emotion, or so to speak. But we're going to see what happens, because in a way there's a lot of support with the whole Venus square Jupiter, and with the moon being so empowered to be nurturing, and connected with Mars. It's hard to say which way this could go, but I think definitely the potential danger here is that, if the feelings come out in a defensive way, those could come out, without us knowing how it hurts another person, how we express those feelings. So of course, anger and things like that, of course, those are challenging um, to express in a peaceful, loving, healthy way, especially if we're feeling kind of butthurt or sensitive about something. So that's a danger. But it might be in a better case scenario that we're able to finally say, okay, I can't hold this inside. I just have to let go. I have to release some of the resentment or something like that. And it might be that with the support of some of the other things that are happening this week, that we find there's actually some receptivity and perhaps some support, and that can help to heal some of those things. So kind of worst case scenario, best case scenario, or, somewhere in between. But I feel like this is a big theme that could come up for people this week. Okay, number 3 is going to be a lot more simple. Sometimes this period will coincide with the need to have a nurturing environment for a physical injury. Right now, I have noticed that physical things have sort of cropped up for myself, my partner, my parents, a lot of people around me. It seems like they're just your body just gets banged up, and sometimes you just need the spa, the massage, the medicine, the rest. You know what I mean? Like, this can be a time where physical things sort of become illuminated, and they're saying, hey, over here, like, give me something nice and nurturing, for me right now. Maybe that's just a better diet or something after the holidays, but whatever it is, that could be something that is something we see with this as well. Okay, number 4, sometimes there can be a strong instinct to be a tough mother bear who fights to defend her cub, and perhaps this fight even happens in a very public setting. Again, we have a full Mars, so you get the sense that it's like whatever's happening with Mars is sort of illuminated, right? And with Mars in Cancer, you can always have a kind of like, hey, keep your hands off my kid, kind of a moment where you just react gutturally because you're feeling very protective about the ones you love or your family, right? So that's a pretty easy one. Okay, number 5 is going to be demanding that others participate in a cause that you feel passionate about. This is one that can definitely come in. Why? With the sun in Capricorn illuminating the virtues of hard work, responsibility, perseverance, especially perseverance over like discomfort of our bodies and feelings to achieve goals. These virtues shine off both Mars and the moon, who will try to web people together for a mission or a cause, right? So that is one that I feel is really interesting. Now, one thing that's kind of deep about the sun in Capricorn in standing in opposition to Mars in Cancer, it like on a deeper level, let's just talk about this for a second. Capricorn was called the gateway of the gods, because when the sun passes over the winter solstice, the sun bends up. It has reached its closest proximity to the world at this time, and at that moment precisely, it sort of bends up and begins moving away from the world and climbs higher and higher. Which is why, of course, it starts to get warmer from that point forward. But in the ancient world, the sun representing something like spirit and the world representing something like matter or the material realm, it was symbolically thought of that the spirit was leaving the body, or the spirit was leaving the world. It was sort of heading away. What happens when you die, right? The spirit, is as many people do believe, the spirit will leave the body. The body remains part of the material realm, decays and returns to the earth. But we all have different beliefs about what happens with the spirit. But clearly, the spirit is separating from the body, and this makes sense because in the wintertime, you're not going to go out and plant your field, right? It's too cold. The cold of the winter, the decay and death all around in this season is part of the environment of that time of the year. And so it makes sense that spirit is sort of leaving matter. On the other hand, where we think about Cancer, the opposite happens, where the sun bends back towards the world again. It's at its highest point. It's very hot. But from this point forward, the sun moves closer and closer to the world. And this, of course, symbolically represents that the spirit is re-entering matter, which is interesting, right? Think of the theme of Mundi, where Cancer is the rising sign of the birth of the world. Cancer is very connected with the birth in the material realm, or of the material realm, right? So what this means is that the emotions, the feelings, the web of life that connects in family, all those Cancer kinds of themes, or because spirit is inhabiting the material realm, and it's the material realm, I think, that is saying that's where feelings dwell. That's where emotions dwell. Emotions dwell in the material form. So oftentimes it's more challenging to regard emotions in the sign of Capricorn, because the tendency is for that disassociation from the material realm on a spirit level, because the spirit is moving away. So there's a much higher tendency to sort of disregard the feelings or the emotions or stuff like that. And so that's a deeper level of what we see happening here with Mars in the sign of the emotions and the feelings, and the sun in the sign of sort of what's left if we're not feeling, and what is it, feels before reals. This is the opposite. This is reals before feels with Capricorn, let's be honest. And so what's left is like the goal, right? The virtues of work and perseverance and discomfort over feelings to achieve something, right? Is often stereotypical themes that you'll find with Capricorn solar people, or people with strong Capricorn placements. So again, you have sort of the sun in Capricorn illuminating the virtues of hard work, responsibility, perseverance over discomfort, and feelings to achieve goals. These virtues are shining off of the sun. This light is shining and hitting Mars and the moon. And there may be this way in which that light is working within the moon's realm, trying to bring people together for a Marsy kind of mission or cause. So it can be very demanding. It can say, no, you will, like, we are going to fight this together. We will come together and get this done. We need to clean the garages. Damn it, it's happening this weekend, or whatever it is this week, right? There can be that way in which it's a really almost like demanding kind of thing of other people. Okay. Now, finally, I want to leave you with some questions that I think also may illustrate some of the archetypal nature of the astrology of what we've been talking about here. So questions that may become illuminated at this time are, number one, what must be saved that we should fight for and be in charge of? Number two, what must be sacrificed at this time? Number three, what birth is happening at this time that requires release or perhaps loss? Sometimes when something is born, something else needs to be laid to rest or be released, or we lose it somehow. Number four, what things have failed and we need to walk away from them so that a fresh start can be made, right? Failure is hard. It's hard to admit that we failed. And I think a lot of times we're sort of taught that you're not supposed to fail, or it's not okay. you just keep pushing, keep trying, no matter, you just bulldoze on, even if it's really obvious that you shouldn't. You just stop and make a course correction and do something else. And there can be a fresh start, but there has to be this way in which we just like, we're okay with that. We did something and it failed, and it's okay, right? We don't have to always succeed at everything we do, no matter what, every time we try anything. But I don't know why there's like this thing today where that is like failure is unacceptable somehow, or I don't know, but I think that could be a really important question. Number 5, what wounds can we share and who might be receptive to those versus what wounds might someone use against us? Now, I almost didn't put this one because I don't want you guys to be paranoid, but I think that this may serve to illustrate, a different angle on the same themes here. It's good to be vulnerable. It's good to open up and share what hurts us or what pain we're in or something. But I do think there needs to be some discrimination, because sometimes you can be vulnerable with somebody that, may not use that information in a way that is in a way that is okay, right? They may use it against you later or whatever. So I think there, is some discernment, but these may be questions that are really important right now. Number 6, what battles are necessary and which ones only entrench us into our own separation camp that we don't really want to be in? It's like that classic, are you going to die on that hill? Is it, it's important to stand up for what you need or what you feel or what you've been hurt over. But like, if you keep pushing and bulldozing, like at what point does the victory, the emotional victory or the satisfaction of standing up and fighting for something, at what point does the cost of battle simply become almost irrelevant to what you really want, maybe, which is just, not being alone, not separating yourself out into like your own camp where you're just now on this side and there's the others and then you, or you and the others or something like that. At what point does that just become like, is it worth it? That's a hard one for me, especially. I always find that that's difficult because you're always taught to be who you are at all costs, right? You have to be you. You just be yourself, right? Well, yeah, but within reason. I mean, you can't ignore community or the needs of others or how you affect people or, all of that, right? I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys any of this stuff, but that could be another important question. Okay, well, that is what I have today. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you guys found something good with this, and let me know in the comments anything you notice about the astrology. I'd love to hear any stories you guys want to share about this particular transit. And I will be back next week with another video. We'll take a look at some more astrology then. Until then, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.